So I'm Adam Bryson. I think I know pretty much everybody in here. I'm looking around. Like, I think I've taught most of y'all's kids because I usually do like slightly younger classes. I didn't just call, you guys are my age, so we're all in this together. But typically it's like, I just got out of the young marrieds class where I look at them and I'm like, wow, what happened? It went so fast. Or like the college class, and just to watch them, like mentor them as they kind of come. And now I'm teaching their parents, so let's see how this goes and see, what it's like. The way I teach is I try to teach with a little humor, right? Like if I say something and it's not funny, you don't have to laugh, but I'd appreciate it if you did. But I also believe that like if I just sit up here and talk, y'all are going to check out. So my classes, I'm a facilitator where I ask for people to talk and like participate. Like I'm a school principal, and I know, do we have educators? I see at least one, a few. Raise your hand if you're a teacher. You're a teacher? Yeah, you're a teacher. That's it, like 5 or 6. Anna Wakeham should be a teacher, but she basically is a teacher. You're a homeschool teacher. So that's 8. So I watch, like, I really would like to teach a college class just studying how Jesus taught, because I think he's the master teacher. If you watch how Jesus taught people, he tried to make it real and relevant. He spoke in ways that they understood. He had people talk together to figure things out. Like he was the master teacher. And so I try to like teach like when I'm at school. I'm like, hey, let's teach in a way Jesus did. Like you make things relevant. And when I'm doing Bible class, I'm like, I'm going to try to do it how Jesus would want to teach. Maybe that sounds bad. Like I think I'm like him, but. So you guys got to help me out because I believe that good conversations lead to a lot. All right. So did y'all like talk about what we're teaching about at all, Miss Waldron, at all? So, huh? Am I not, should I not call her Miss Waldron? That's what she's gonna be to me. So. We're going to start, the lesson is called Lessons in Luke, and it's basically there's 19 meals in the book of Luke. And I've taken 10 of the most major meals and broken them out, and we're going to just do a lesson about each meal. Because I believe meals are like impactful. I believe meals are very, very impactful to me. In fact, I was just talking to my dear friend Anna as I walked in about a meal that we're going to have that we had a few years ago that I'll never forget, right? Like it was one of the most impactful meals of my life. I didn't mean to talk about that. That just hit me, right? And I'm trying to take over and cook a meal so I can replicate it. I'm never going to be able to, but that meal was so impactful. So I just believe that like meals bring us together. Meals put us on the same page. So with that being said, do y'all agree? Or does anybody feel comfortable sharing like, hey, here's a meal that really was one of the most impactful meals of my life or one of the most impactful moments of my life? Has anybody had any significant meals in your life? And one thing also, I'm pretty confident, so I don't mind if it's quiet. I'll just stare back at you. Like I know, wait time, 15 seconds.
I'll share a story.
All right, girl.
It's kind of longish.
I like it kind of longish.
So, Joe's birthday was August the 11th, and he loves steak, and so Clark wanted to make a steak. Clark hasn't made very many steaks, so I was like, okay, you go for it. You're 20, you think you know everything. It's okay.
Don't badmouth Clark now. That's my boy. Like, come on now.
And anyway, but I don't eat steak, so I didn't eat it. But the kids said it was good. But the whole time, of course, I'm thinking, man, I wish Joe was here just for 5 minutes to help him, give him some tips and that kind of thing. And so the meal was good. We celebrated and honored Joe's birthday on his birthday. So then we went to, my birthday was the next week, so we went to Disney and for my 50th. And I thought, well, I want a nice meal. And so we made reservations at a nice restaurant at Disney. And so the boys ordered steak. And of course, they're always talking about Dad and his steaks. And Clark really, really enjoyed his steak. And so I said, ask the waitress to, how they prepared it. So he did, and she's like, well, I don't know, but I'll ask the chef. And so she said she went and got the chef. So he came out and he walked Clark through, you know,
Aww.
a basic way to make the steaks and that kind of thing. And I was so appreciative. Well, then less than 2 minutes later, this chef comes back and he has an iPad and a little container of something. And so he walks Clark through the long version of making a steak and exactly what he did. And the little container was a seasoning.
Oh, man, that's so cool.
And when the chef walked away, I had tears in my eyes because his name was Joe.
Aww.
Well, side note, that's because Joe Wakeham just messing with you in that situation. Just know that's my friend. Like, he's like, I'm gonna do this blessing, and I'm gonna make it really obvious for you.
I'm not done. I got one more thing. And so the waitress, I was, crying when she came back, and I thought she's gonna think the chef was just, giving us
Abusive,
down the road
yeah.
or something. I said, I'm sorry, I'm tearing up. I'm gonna tell you the short version of our family story. And then she started crying, and then she comes to deliver the birthday dessert or whatever, and she said, I just want you to know, I feel like you've trusted me with your story, and I feel like we're family now, and your entire meal is on the house.
Oh, wow. Golly.
Anyway, so it was a very good dinner. It was a very good meal, and sometimes meals aren't just about the food.
100%. It's about what they mean and what they represent. And who wants to follow that one? Nobody. Sorry. So, mic drop. It's true though, because when you get, I feel like when you sit at a table together, there's something special about it, and you do become family. I always think about when I was 25 or 26, young married, my wife and I took a bunch of youth to Hialeah in Miami, which is like a real kind of urban area of Hawaii, real high Hispanic population. And we went because we had a friend that was in a church plant there. And we did all these things. It was one of the most impactful trips ever. One of the girls lost a tooth. I'll never forget that. She tried to hide it. 2 days, she made it without us knowing. We went to a subway in Miami and sang worship songs in the subway. Like, that was the most intimidating thing I've ever done. But the most impactful thing of that trip is we made 100 sandwiches, just plain old, turkey or whatever. I don't even know what they were, turkey and mustard. And then we went to a homeless community in Miami. And you think we just go and we just started blessing people. You go and give them sandwiches, and what a blessing this is. And that's how I'd always done it in the past. And our friend Mark Herrera, who you guys may know Mark. Didn't you go to Harding about that time? You didn't go to Harding? That's okay. I have ADD too, so if I see something, I'm going to say it. Vicki Kennedy used to work for me. She can vouch for it. So Mark said, hey, we're going to do it differently. We're going to go and we're going to enjoy a meal with these people. Like, don't pass it out. Go sit and eat with them. And so as the leader of all these youth from Brentwood, we went to this real tough area, and I was like, we're going to sit and eat with them. And we did. And ended up meeting this man who had the entire Bible pretty much memorized, but to his heart. And it was like, he loved it. And we'd ask him questions and be like, well, that's from first, and had this knowledge and wisdom that you would never see. I still to this day don't know what led to him being homeless, but I learned so much from this dude. And I thought, golly, here I was going to bless this guy. Let me show you, we got it figured out. And this guy had written the words of the Bible just on his heart in a way that I'd never met anybody who has ever done that before. And I told the kids, that was our biggest takeaway every time we did. What about John, man? I wish I had that kind of knowledge in my mind, and obviously there's some other things that he needs to work on because he's in a bad situation, but it was so impactful. And if we wouldn't have actually done that meal together, we would have just gone and blessed everybody, right? We just went and, hey, we're from Brentwood and we blessed Hialeah. We gave them sandwiches and now they blessed us, right? Because we sat and had a meal together. So I just believe meals are so impactful. And so we're going to study 10 of them. All right. Before you, don't even open your Bibles yet now. We got 19 meals in the book of Luke. Studying 10. There's no other gospel that records meals like this. Why do you think Luke has all these meals in here? If you know anything about Luke or just the differences in the Gospels. Why do you think meals are important to Luke? I don't know if I have an answer for that. What do you think? And I'll call on people if I think you got an idea. What do you think? You got an idea. What is it?
Well, he was a physician, so he understood the importance of nutrition.
Sure. Maybe it was nutritional. Like, hey, I'm paying attention. We got to eat meals. What else might be a reason Luke might be the meal master? You think you know? No. Anybody? I think there's something about him being the physician, maybe like, that's meals. You record meals when you go to the doctor. I don't know, like it seems important. I'm just grasping at it. It makes sense to me. Does it make sense to y'all that Luke might be that one?
Information. He went and interviewed people.
Yeah.
He's not there. Is that?
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe he got the stories that people remember about having meals, and when he told stories, Jesus told stories, he had meals.
And I think about like, maybe when people talk, especially in that time when you talk about cool situations, meals are very common. I think about like when this may not make any sense, or maybe it will. When we talk about like the highlights from the year, we have like New Year's Eve, like what's the highlights? It's always big things like, man, when we went on that trip to Florida, and I just wonder if like meals were kind of that idea back then, because man, remember that great time we got together and had that big meal? Like it was so impactful. In many ways, that might have been like a vacation. Does that make sense? I don't know. Thoughts on that? What do you think, man? You agree? He agrees. All right.
What it makes me think of when you were asking about impactful meals is not necessarily one specific meal, but it was always like family lunch, Sunday lunch at Grandma's was always the best. And not one particular one sticks out, but that's when the family was all around the table together, smushed in Grandma and G Daddy's, 2-bedroom house, but we didn't care.
Yeah.
And that's when we heard the stories of the good old days. And that's when we, connected and laughed and just enjoyed one another.
I always laugh about it and laugh at it, right? So growing up, you remember your grandmas a certain way, right? We all remember. And I remember going, my mom's Italian. My grandmother's from Sicily. She was a Sicilian orphan. So was my grandfather. They met in Massachusetts when they were younger and got married. So there's, like, don't mess with me. I got family. But they're like Sicilian as they come, right? And so, but all I can remember is going to my grandma's house, and I was always too dang skinny, right? Like, she wanted a fat Italian. And so all I did was eat. Like, I'd go there and be like, pasta, and now it's lasagna, and now it's fettuccine alfredo, like everything you could ever, you ever had real pasta fazool? Like, always eating. And I remember it being this bountiful table of like, the size of this room. And in hindsight, like, my grandma was a hoarder of National Enquirer magazines. You had to go through and get around them. And the table was probably this small, but in my mind, it's the most special place ever because that's where my meals were. So I think you're right. Like, it makes things stand out, which is why Luke probably has all these stories. All right, any other thoughts before we get to reading?
I think food. We have food at all gatherings.
Yep.
When people gather together, there's almost always food. And I think that when there is food present at a gathering, it breaks down certain barriers.
It does.
And it allows for a more natural conversation, and it allows for people to feel more comfortable sharing things that they might not share.
It does, 100%.
And it also kind of bridges, time and culture, because everybody does some version of that, even in ancient times and modern times. So the stories are very relevant then and now, because it's something we still always do.
Yeah.
And you're all doing the same thing at the same time, and maybe not as distracted as we are at other times.
Truth.
Maybe even looking at each other,
Some deep, I knew there was a whole lot about to come out. Yes, sir.
I think it takes a relationship to another level, like when you meet somebody and you share a meal.
It really does, because I think about those. I have a lot of church associates. Like, I go around like these guys are my church associates. Like, we need to have a meal together, but I haven't had that opportunity. I know them. I want to be friends with them. We haven't had that opportunity. Vicki Kennedy's family's been in my house, and we've had a meal together. Like, there's a different connection when you've shared a meal together. they've been at my kitchen table, and we've maybe even shed tears at my kitchen table together. So our relationship's going to be different, right? Because we've had that meal together. I don't even want to look at her. You know, like when you have certain meals together, David Coggins has been to my house and had like a meal together. So our relationship is probably going to be a little bit different, right? Just changes it. You got something to say, sir. What were you going to say? David, do you? No, okay. Sorry, I thought you were.
I think about like the dating relationship, even going to a meal is like even more intimate. You know, you might want to start out going to coffee.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
And then if you're having a meal, then you're moving forward.
Yeah.
I don't know, something about eating food together.
Something about eating spaghetti together too. Like if you can, that's my big thing. Like if you can eat spaghetti together, you're meant to be married. That's what I told Clark too. All right, our first meal today is going to be our biggest meal. I'd say this one is the coolest meal that we're going to study. That's not called the Last Supper. It's the feeding of the 5,000 when Jesus feeds 5,000 people in Luke. So everybody turn to Luke 9. Just turn to Luke 9:1. And you know, as I've taught more and more Bible classes, I realize sometimes we leave out context, and it's very important to make sure we have context. So, I'm going to read 1 through 9 before we ever get to this meal. What's going on? Okay, so we kind of have a little bit of context. So Luke 9:1 through 7. When Jesus had called the 12 together, he gave them the power and authority to drive out all demons and to cure diseases. And he sent them out to proclaim the kingdom of God and to heal the sick. He told them, take nothing for your journey, no staff, no bag, no bread, no money, no extra shirt. Whatever house you enter, stay there until you leave that town. If people do not welcome you, leave their town, shake the dust off your feet as a testimony against them. So they went out and went from village to village, proclaiming the good news and healing people everywhere. Now Herod heard all about that was going on, and he was perplexed because they were saying that John had been raised from the dead, others that Elijah had appeared, and still others that one of the prophets of long ago had come back to life. But Herod said, I beheaded John. Who then is this that I hear such things about? And he tried to go see him. So, this is the section right before this meal we're going to read. So tell me, what's going on? What's the context that we got going on? If you were to kind of describe the life of Jesus' mission, how would you put it? Put it in your own words, somebody. Did that question make sense?
He's putting his disciples to work.
He's putting his disciples to work, right? Like we see the disciples are now being told, hey, you can go do this. And I think it's cool. It's like, you got authority to drive out demons. What else do you see happening? What else stands out? Anything stand out from this section? It could be small, big, or in between.
Don't go if you're not welcome.
What?
Don't go if you're not welcome.
Right? Do y'all struggle with that ever? This has nothing to do with the meal, but the whole like, just shake your feet, the dust off your feet if they won't listen. Do y'all struggle with that ever? Because I do.
Take no supplies with you. Take
Nothing. You don't need nothing. Why? What's that important? What's important about that?
You're depending on God to provide everything for you.
God's going to provide, right?
It's almost like a parallel from the children of Israel in the desert at the wonder 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
Moses went out, he provided for them.
100%.
But also what they're doing is obviously the news has traveled and they're seeing the things that
Mhm.
John was doing, or the people were seeing what John was doing. So he thinks, Herod's thinking, well, what's going on?
Yeah. There's something going on. There's a movement going. So, like, I never draw on the whiteboard, but there's a whiteboard and a marker. So here we go, y'all. If this was Jesus's life, right? And we'll just say, like, this is his ministry start to his death. We're pretty early in the timeline of Jesus, right? Like, this is pretty early. Right now, we see the movement of Jesus is starting to really pick up. Like, obviously, people know about him because his people are going out and doing all these great things. But this is a significant moment in the Jesus movement. This is where he's sending his disciples out and he's giving them some clear instructions. Big moment, if you ask me. And I envision at this point, there's a lot of excitement going on with disciples converting people because they got the ability to do some of these things. So I just feel like this movement of Jesus is like, if you're at a snowball effect, it's really starting to roll right now. We're in a good spot for Jesus. He's new, but people are getting excited about him. Any thoughts before we jump in, or any disagreements, or maybe other things you may think before we jump into the actual meal of today? I'll give it a second because sometimes we got to just sit on it. Anything else kind of stand out? Something? You can say it. No? Yeah, you look like you want to say something.
Well, I did, but.
Go for it. Just say it.
Well, I was just gonna say, it's like Tim said, it's the ancient equivalent of Facebook and Instagram. They're out doing stuff and causing a stir, and so Herod is alerted to it because of that.
100%.
But just think of how things were communicated back then. No newspapers, no radios, no phones. It was how they did it. That's how they did it.
And I love that you said that, because in my last one I just said there's probably a lot of excitement and energy, and I feel like Jesus is starting to hit that, like, don't take this the wrong way, like celebrity status, like he's known now. And obviously Herod's like, wait a minute, if there's not a lot of movement going, nobody cares. Like, you could be, Herod's not going to worry about it. Obviously something's happening that he's worried about it. To me, like, it's a very exciting time in the timeline of Jesus. Very exciting time. Any other thoughts, comments, questions, or?
Side note on Herod thing, he was worried about being John the Baptist coming back from the dead again.
He's got all these. He's like, what is going on? Who they've saying it's John the Baptist or Elijah? That just is weird to me that he's worried about that.
And he killed John the Baptist.
Mhm.
So he should be worried about that.
Right? Well, but then you don't think he's dead, right? Like, yeah, it's crazy. It's an interesting time right here.
And he killed him for a ridiculous reason, and he knows that.
Yeah.
So.
Right? Probably a lot of fear. Like, hey, what's going on? How's this coming back? All right, let's go. Let's turn to 10 real quick. And I'm going to read. I may stop and just ask some questions or point something out. And if you have something like, hey, just stop me. Like, this is really informal, okay? When the apostles returned, they reported to Jesus what they had done. Then he took them with him, and they withdrew by themselves to a town called Bethsaida. But the crowds learned about it and followed him. He welcomed them and spoke to them about the kingdom of God and healed those who needed healing. So, before we keep going, I think it's so cool to see Jesus' love right here. Because you got to just notice, like, this is a huge moment for these friends and for Jesus. But he still welcomes everybody else, right? Like, he says, all right, well, people are here, and he starts teaching them about it. I feel like it shows a lot about Jesus' love. Because not only does he have his 12 closest friends that he's pouring into, but he also sees everybody else that he's pouring into. And I just think that would be an easy time for Jesus to be like, all right, we got to go get away and step away because these guys need some time alone with me. That's not what he did. Any thoughts on that? Or should I just keep reading? I'm going to keep reading. All right. Late in the afternoon, the 12 came to him and said, send the crowd away so they can go to the surrounding villages and countryside and find food and lodging, because we're in a remote place here. He replied, you give them something to eat. They answered, we only have 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. Unless we go and buy food for this crowd, and mine says about 5,000 men were there. But he said to the disciples, have them sit down in groups of 50 each. The disciples did so, and everyone sat down. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke them. Then he gave them to the disciples to distribute to the people. They all ate and were satisfied, and the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. It's pretty cool, right? Thoughts you guys have before I have my own questions? Anything stand out, or like, hey, this is a new idea I've never noticed, or every time I read this, this is what stands out. What do y'all got from that section? I want to hear it. Y'all have all read that before. What do we got? Any thoughts you have?
What I think about is, like Harding said, the Israelites wandered in the desert for 40 years, right? God fed them. Here is God amongst the disciples. Do they know that story? Obviously they do, if they're good little Jewish scholars, right?
I always stop here a lot of times and ask, hey, what did they know at this time?
And I heard a quote earlier this week I read that God has not forgotten the recipe for manna.
That's a good one. That should be like a bumper sticker. Vicki Kennedy's got something to say. What you got, Vicki?
I don't know if I've ever thought about this, but I think that the apostles, they've been out,
Mm-hmm.
and now they're coming back. themselves.
They needed Jesus to themselves.
To debrief, you know, like,
Yes.
and kind of be with him. And so, you know, when they say, hey, let's send him away because we don't have enough food, you know, maybe some of that was just.
All right, was it wrong for them to say send it? You look at the different, well, before I get to that question, I think about this. Natalie, my daughter, is on a high school volleyball team. She plays volleyball all the time. They went on a trip to Alabama this weekend, and they played really good teams, and all their seniors had to stay for the ACT, so it was a bumpy thing, an emotional thing. My daughter was wiped out. It had nothing to do with the fact that she played 4 volleyball games. She plays 4 volleyball games all the time. It's emotional. It was the travel. It was the, hey, there's more weight on my shoulders, because that's very insignificant when compared to the mission of Jesus. And I think about how just that travel alone wore her out emotionally. Yeah, these guys are done. They're tired. There's probably been all this excitement because they're able to do all these great things, and they probably are having people like, they're winning over people. But then they've come home and they're like, all right, it's just time. Like, let's just, and it's not a big request like, Jesus, you've been teaching these guys, good job. Now let's let everybody go home and go to get a meal, and we'll go get a meal together, right? Makes sense. That's not what Jesus did, right? What other thoughts you guys have?
Seemed like all through Luke, we stayed on this summer in a Wednesday night Bible class or study of their house with some neighbors. And one thing is, you always pick up different things. One thing I picked up was Jesus would put compassion for people above church etiquette or tradition or whatever. He'd heal the person on the Sabbath. He would feed the people versus having a communion with his building up his or meeting with his apostles.
Okay,
It's
and
about compassion here. Right?
100%. He loved people. I mean, Jesus loves people. And so this is another example of like, yeah, he probably would have been, nobody would have died of starvation if he'd have said, hey, y'all go find your own food.
And these are the same people that saw him perform his first, first miracle with turning the water to wine. And they are already, what they were looking at here was, well, we don't have the cost it would take to feed this many, which is probably, if it says 5,000 men, it was probably more like 10 or 12,000.
Well, and that's one thing we got to be real about, like 5,000 men. I say this, like, really, it probably meant 20,000 if you ask me, because that's like 1 wife and 2 kids per man average, but that's probably maybe high. I say even if you just match either a wife and a kid for every man, 10,000 people. It's a lot of people. A lot of people to feed. You've been waiting. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that I know they were tired, because their travel was like by foot. So they were tired and exhausted, and then they reverted to, they were doing amazing things, and then they go right back to their selfish human side and say, we can't do this, Jesus. Why would you ask us to do this?
Well, and I'd say it's almost partially our selfish human side and partially how quick we forget what Jesus can do. Like, we ain't got enough food. Jesus, send them home.
Or even what they were doing.
Yes, right? Like, how easy. And like, with me, I'm going to bring in stories of me just so you know, like I became a Christian later at 24. And the first book of the Bible I studied was Revelations, right? So the fact that I ever did it, but then when I started studying, like I would read about the Israelites, and I remember Sarah was the one I studied with as a 24-year-old man, and I'd be like, these people are so freaking stupid. Like that was my approach. Like as somebody who hadn't read about him, like he's feeding them, and then dude disappears for a week, and you're building golden statues. Like how dumb are you? And Sarah was like, we do it every day. And I was like, okay. Like that hit me. Like that made a lot of sense to me, and we do. Like we see these things and it's like, oh, I forgot that Jesus did that. Or I watch these situations that Jesus holds our hands through, and then when the next situation comes, we forget that Jesus held our hands through it and he'll do it again. Like we just forget.
And they were tired, but he was tired.
Yeah.
He never stopped. He was tired, and I'm sure he wanted to rest too. His body was a human body.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, for sure. Any other thoughts? I always wonder about this is like, just look at the different perspective of like, neither of them were hateful, but the perspective that the disciples had to the people versus the perspective Jesus had. Both of them were not unloving, but I want to be more like Jesus, right? Like, not, hey, just go, they'll be okay. He's like, no, we're going to make sure they're okay. And I just think it's their perspective on the things was so neat to look at the differences. Any other thoughts on that?
Jesus gave them power.
Yeah.
They have the power to do healing and driving out demons. But when it came time to feed them, it was impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, they didn't realize what they were capable of.
Yeah. And Jesus could have just said, hey, I got this. Just go out and like tell everybody to close their eyes, and when they open it up, we're going to have food in front of them. He's like, no, you go do it. Like, he's basically putting it on them. Have them sit. And let's talk about this too. Like, have them sit down in groups of 50 and take the loaves. And the disciples were part of the process, right? Is it significant that we sit in groups of 50? Does that have anything to do with anything? Do you think? Because I feel like Jesus does things for a reason.
I don't know if there's significance, but like as a teacher, I'm sitting there going, how long would that take to get 5,000 people quiet in groups of 50?
We don't have to be quiet. They're not important. No, I'm just kidding. Level 2 volume. No. Yeah, it's forever, right? I mean, 12 people fit. We're going to say 10,000 people because I've never had anybody challenge me on that. Like, that's the most smallest number you can get. 10,000 people is a lot of people. That's like, I mean, that's like Starwood for any of y'all people that are from here. Like, that's like, you can't feed all of Starwood in an hour. Why did I say Starwood of all things? Like, I say dumb stuff. Starwood is good. And these people from out of town are like, who's Starwood? Anything else you guys got? Any other takeaways? I got other things. Do we think, so here's what I think, because I asked about that. I think it's significant that he did say, hey, have them sit in groups. I don't think the number 50 is significant, but I think it's significant that he's like, hey, sit in groups. And then he passes them out because I think there's an element of communion there, like a foreshadowing of like what we're going to do. Like, hey, take this fish, take this bread and break it, and they break it and give it to these people, and they sit and they commune together. And I think it's showing the importance of doing that because you have 10,000 people, 5,000 people sitting in rows, and you have them just eat a meal. It's almost like they're just looking straight ahead, right? But hey, get them together and commune. He's already shown the importance of small groups, even though it's not very small, 50, but it is, right? Like the importance of having community. I think it's very intentional that he sat them in groups of 50. I think it's probably very impactful that he sat them in groups of 50. I think it was part of the process to get these people to follow him, right? So I think it's very impactful. And I wrote this down. I think he wanted to enjoy this meal for 3 reasons. One, I'm going to hold that actually because that's too much. So we're going to save that for the end of class. I almost gave it all away. Hold on. Any other thoughts y'all got? We're going to go on to the next one. I always say this, on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you rate this miracle as cool? Do you think this is like a cool miracle or a not cool miracle? Are we not allowed to say that? Because even Anna Wakeham didn't make eye contact, so that's bad. What do you think, Mr.? You think this is a pretty cool miracle? Yeah.
Yeah, it's it's not giving sight to the blind or something, but it's on a big scale. It's not just one person, it's a big scale.
Yeah. And I ask it because this is the only miracle that's recorded in all the Gospels, other than the resurrection of Jesus. There's one miracle recorded in all the Gospels, the feeding of the 5,000. And I sit back and I'm like, why is this? Because there's all these amazing miracles, guys. Like, if you're blind, I promise you, that is more significant than a meal, right? Having your vision back. Or if you're, some of these people, like, I think about that lady who, I don't remember if it was leprosy or what, but she just touched his cloak and was healed. And I think about, holy cow, that miracle is way more impactful than any meal could ever be. But this is the only meal that's in all the Gospels, or the only miracle that's in all the Gospels. So why? Why do we think that is? Nobody got a good reason, huh?
Would be a lot of bread and a lot of fish.
A lot of bread and a lot of fish.
It was on such a big scale, and back to the communication
Okay.
that he's there, all of these people will go back to their towns and occurred, he started with a miracle with them and what they witnessed. It's kind of like he grabbed them with the miracle and then he gave them his words, God's words after that.
That's perfect. I'm going to move this down what I was going to read because you hit it. So let's go. Hold on. I just don't want to screw up. I'm copying and pasting. I got to use my computer when I do this, y'all, or else I can't teach. Everybody go to John 6 real quick. John 6:16. John 6:16. And this is what occurred right after the meal. So I think when we're going to look at the meal, the significance of the meal, let's look at what happened before, and let's go to right after the meal. And that's going to be in the book of John. I'll start reading 16. When evening came, his disciples went down to the lake, where they got into a boat and set off across the lake for Capernaum. By now it was dark, and Jesus had not yet joined them. A strong wind was blowing, and the waters grew rough. When they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus approaching the boat. Walking on water, they were frightened. But he said to them, "It is I, do not be afraid." Then they were willing to take him into the boat, and immediately the boat reached the shore they were headed. The next day, the crowd that had stayed on the opposite side of the lake realized there had only been one boat there, and Jesus had not entered it with his disciples, but that he had gone away alone. Then some boats from Tiberias landed near the place where the people had eaten the bread and the Lord had given thanks. Once the crowd realized that neither Jesus nor his disciples were there, they got in their boats and went to Capernaum in search of Jesus. So, will you say it? I said it wrong. Say it loud. Capernaum. I can never say it because in my mind, those letters all blend together. I got a weird brain. All right, so what does this section tell us about either the situation, Jesus, God, people? Because this is right after. What can we draw? What conclusions can we draw from this?
Are these people spiritually hungry?
Are they?
They're still following Jesus, wanting to hear more.
They got their meal, right?
Right.
They got their meal and they're still following him.
More of his teaching.
Yeah. What else? I think that's a great point. Any other thoughts?
My heading says Jesus is the true bread from heaven.
He's the true bread from heaven, and people see that, right? Like, big time. What else? Anything else? You got something to say, I feel like?
Oh, no.
No? Okay. She's like, no, please no. Here's what I think. So I think we have a miracle of abundance, right? To a miracle of like presence. A lot of miracles going on, but this is what I get from this section. I think Jesus did this meal for 3 reasons. So I'm back to where I almost went, but I had a couple more minutes to burn, right? One, some people need a miracle, right? Do you agree with me? Some people need a miracle. I'll be honest with y'all, I needed a miracle. Like as a non-believing, non-Christian person who grew up in Nashville, Tennessee, as a 24-year-old, I had plenty of people tell me about Jesus. I needed to see something. And I had a miracle experience. I'll promise y'all, you ever want to hear it? You ask me about it, I'll tell you about it. I needed a miracle. Not everybody does. So some people needed that miracle of like, holy cow, I know we started with just 2 pieces, two loaves and what was it, 5 and 3? My brain's gone, y'all. We didn't have any food. And now look what we got. They needed to see that miracle. That's reason number 1. I also believe this. I believe Jesus wanted us to have an introduction to communion. Because, I mean, you hear kind of the wording that he even used, getting groups, and I'm going to break this bread, and after he gave thanks and broke the bread, it was distributed like such an introduction to communion. And that's scary. And he also, knew the importance of fellowship, which is why he had him in those groups. And finally, Jesus loved people. These are people that we need to remember. 5,000 to 10,000 people were just following this dude. And he saw them and he loved them and he wanted to feed them a meal. That's a hard thing to do when you're one person with 5,000, but he loved them and he wanted to feed them a meal. That's who Jesus is. And so he knew how hard it would be. Like, yeah, you could have said go and nobody. These were people that were probably experiencing hardships here and there. They're coming to hear Jesus, and he wanted to feed them. Like, that's a loving Jesus. And then there was one other thing I wanted to make you get, so I'm just going to read this. Our human nature is to always think we need to do more and do more. But the story of Jesus feeding 5,000 shows that God wants to do it with a little, right? Like we don't need more. God does amazing things with little. With only 5 pieces of bread and 2 fish, he fed 5,000. So no matter what we want to do, no matter how big or small it is, like if we allow God to do it, we can do it. Let him lead you. So that was meal number 1. Y'all got 9 more from me. Thank you.